Cause I got a really big team, and they need some really big rings. They need some really nice things. Better be coming with no strings.
Hey everybody, this is your host, Sam Rodriguez from She's Mic'd Up on Brooklyn College Radio 1090 AM. The show will officially be resuming on Tuesday, February 16th, and after that every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m., which is a change from last semester as we broadcasted every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. And by we, I mean me and my co-host Javier Gutierrez, who couldn't be with us today as we are broadcasting especially for the topics that are circulating out there in the sports world. So I have been broadcasting from home. Today is a conversion day within CUNY, so we weren't on the proper schedule. So as I said, I'm broadcasting from home. I did a Periscope earlier, which I hope all of you checked out, and thanks to all of you that did. Speaking of Javier, I want to say congratulations to the Denver Broncos. He's a big Broncos fan, and I'm upset he didn't tune into the Periscope earlier. I'm sure he would have enjoyed my shout out for that insane Broncos D. But I want to get into a few things, just two things in particular, because by next week you guys probably are not going to care too much about whether or not Cam did or did not walk out, what he said wrong, what he didn't say wrong. At least hopefully we'll be past all of that. The Knicks, on the other hand, might still be relevant as they'll be returning from All-Star Weekend and back to the circus that the Knicks have become since the big news yesterday. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to address today is the firing of head coach Derek Fisher. This was a long time coming, and the firing is definitely warranted for several reasons I'll get into. The first thing and the most alarming thing that Fisher has said in recent weeks, at least to my mind, is that the playoffs are not important. About 2 weeks ago, the Knicks were only a game or two out of the 8th seed, which is pretty indicative that the playoffs were, in fact, a realistic expectation for Knicks fans and for coaches and for the players themselves. And what I found most alarming about it, honestly, is that the playoffs are incentive. Unless you're a team like the Sixers, like the Nets, who are clearly not going to make the playoffs, then the playoffs are incentive. And if you're telling your players, as you told, all of the press, all of the media, and all of us watching at home, that if we don't make the playoffs, hey, it's okay. We're not going to live up to the expectations of others. And that's fine. You don't have to live up to the expectations of others, but you should have high expectations for a team who in the former half of the season played extremely, extremely well together. Their defense was put together. KP was on fire, and he's hit his so-called rookie wall, though I think he kind of shot his way out of it at Denver. But it was definitely a realistic expectation for all of us to have and for the coach himself to have. And that's why I found it alarming, because he didn't seem very optimistic about this team. And I think there's a lot to be optimistic about, which is what Phil Jackson kind of alluded to in his press conference yesterday. The second alarming comment Fisher made was that he doesn't draw plays. And I think we've all pretty much figured that out, given how the Knicks have looked down the stretch and some shots that were taken, a Flalo's look against OKC. It wasn't a bad look, so I'm not going to criticize that one too much. But a lot of his reasons for not drawing a play or calling a timeout, rather, was so the defense on the opposing team obviously could, draw up a play. But at the same time, that's time for the offense to draw up a play. So I'm not really understanding, or not that I have to understand anymore. I didn't understand a lot of Fisher's late in the game calls, plays. His rotations were atrocious at times. We all know that. Having Jose Calderon and Sasha on the court at the same time in crunch time, mind you, was questionable. Having Carmelo, Porzingis, Aflalo all on the bench in crunch time, questionable. You can't put Porzingis in with 3 minutes left in the game. We're only down, 8 points. He's going to try to be the hero. It's too late at that point. You have to get him in there earlier. And another thing that I have a big gripe with is Robin Lopez disappearing from lineups in the fourth quarter. That hook shot it's a threat. And he's gotten great at it. He's been playing, I think, of all the Knicks, the most consistently. And I think he's another scoring option. So I'm not understanding why Lopez has been disappearing late in games either. As I said, it's not something Knicks fans have to understand anymore, as we will be entering the Rambus era of Knicks basketball in about an hour and a half. So the fourth alarming incident was the most obvious, which was the Matt Barnes incident, which I don't think played a sole part in his firing. However, I don't imagine it went over well in the locker room. I don't know if anybody noticed this, but none of the players exactly jumped to his defense, or, stood up for him or commented on the matter. Not that it was a matter to be commented on, as Fisher himself kind of just wanted to focus on basketball. But, it could have hurt the trust in the locker room, the leadership in the locker room. Obviously, something went wrong. And it went wrong very, very quickly. Phil Jackson said yesterday in his press conference that the Knicks need to get back to the kind of basketball they were playing in the beginning of the season. And this is where I said earlier that Fisher lacked a sort of optimism about this team that Phil Jackson obviously feels. The Knicks were a tremendously better basketball team in the beginning of the season. And sure, maybe they're in a slump right now, but listen, I've been watching the Nets games consistently over the past few weeks as an intern over at New York One, and I find it discouraging as a Knicks fan to watch a depleted, not team-wise, but just obviously their record is horrible, the organization is a mess, come out and play with such intensity, such competitiveness, such energy against teams that we were getting blown out by in the first half of these games. During this stretch of losses, no, I didn't expect to beat the Clippers. I didn't expect to beat the Warriors, obviously, and we didn't, but I also didn't expect us to come out getting blown out by almost 30 to the Pistons, losing to the Nuggets, losing to the Magic. These are things that cannot happen, especially those important conference games. Those were games we needed to win. Point blank, period. And one thing I have to say that I really liked about this firing of Fisher was that it shows that Phil is here to do business. If he's willing to fire his good friend, his protege, rather, and accepting the mistake of possibly hiring him in the first place, I think it shows Phil is here to do business, and he's going to do what it takes to turn this franchise around, which is going to take a lot, and we're going to talk about that in a few as well. We're going to have to bring in some pieces. So let's talk for a bit about who we want to coach this Knicks team. I am all in on Thibodeau. That's how I feel. I think not only does he want to be here, does he want to come here and coach this team, he's a proven winner, and the Knicks, especially Phil Jackson, preach defense, and Thibs can obviously do that. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about the triangle and whether or not Phil is going to want to bring in somebody that he doesn't know, that doesn't know the triangle, Thibs not being one of them. But listen, if anybody read Phil's tweet from earlier about 11 rings and about the philosophy he has about team, he basically said, listen, the triangle is not set in stone. I will be looking at other coaches, and I will pick the guy who's right for the job. Essentially, he wants the guy who has a similar philosophy as him when it comes to the meaning of the word team, and it's clearly a winning philosophy, so I'm not going to fault Phil. There's a lot of Knicks fans out there already, wanting Phil to step down and not be our president anymore. And I think we really, really need to acknowledge the fact that Phil did a great job this off season. Let's give him some credit. While all of us were moaning and groaning about drafting Kristaps Porzingis, Phil obviously saw incredible talent and potential ceilings that Porzingis is able to reach. And he's exceeded our expectations thus far, I believe, and he can only go up from here. So let's give the Zen Master some credit for that as well. No, he wasn't able to attract a big star here, but let's also see that, there weren't many. There definitely weren't many. There was LaMarcus Aldridge, and let's be honest, Spurs, Knicks. Do I want to go to the winning franchise, to the consistent franchise, or do I want to go to the Knicks, who may or may not be great? No, LaMarcus Aldridge wants to get a ring as quickly as possible. The Spurs were the best way to do that, so I'm not going to fault Phil or LaMarcus for that falling through. And the other big one that the Knicks were looking at was Greg Monroe, and look how that worked out for the Bucks. He's already in talks. The Bucks are already looking to kind of throw him in there as trade bait. So he did the best with what he could. He brought in some great pieces. I thought Robin Lopez was a great signing. Derek Williams has been a great spark off the bench. And let's see what else he can do. I personally think that Phil has something up his sleeve. I am just not sure exactly what it is, but I'm excited to see it, and I'm excited for his optimism, personally. And I don't think by up his sleeve that means leaving because Jeannie Buss is supposedly going to fire her brother and Phil is going to return to the Lakers. I don't know how credible that is. I don't think that's going to happen. I read an article when Phil came here, and Jeannie was saying, after he quit coaching, he would wake up in the middle of the night and draw X's nose and draw up plays, something that Fisher doesn't do. But he needs a challenge. He loves the game of basketball, and I think his heart and soul is invested into this team, invested into this challenge. The Knicks are his baby, and like I said earlier, I do think he's going to do what it takes to turn this franchise around and get the pieces necessary to do that. Getting back to the coaches, Mark Jackson is another very talented coach, and I think it's very, very important that the Knicks bring in a coach that is reputable. Let's use that word. Tibbs being one of them. Because I also think the selection of the coach is going to determine who the Knicks can attract here in free agency or in trades. Going back to Mark Jackson, I know there's a lot of speculation about his character and how that affects the team, but let's give credit where credit is due. Without Mark Jackson, the Warriors are not what they are today. And that's why everybody who's so in on Luke Walton, listen, I'm going to give the guy credit, but at the same time, Luke Walton walking into the Warriors locker room is like walking into a mansion and being served lobster tails on silver platters. That's not how it's going to be with the Knicks. Walking into the Knicks franchise is like walking into a house that needs some serious, serious renovations. And I don't know if Walton's the guy to do it. It's one thing to inherit a gold mine. It's another to have to dig and work to acquire that fortune. And that's what it's going to take here. There's also Jeff Van Gundy, which I know Knicks fans would celebrate if they got him back, but I don't think he's going to return to coaching. I think he's happy where he is. So, again, there's some strings that need to be loosened a little bit by Phil in terms of the triangle, whether it needs to be modified, updated to today's style of play. I don't know. I'm not the basketball genius. Phil is, and I think he knows where his flaws are, and I think he knows what it takes to turn a basketball team around. And hopefully, this firing of Fisher sparks something in the Knicks. And for those who want Phil to coach, Kurt Rambis is the next best thing. So we'll see tonight how that works out. I want to also address people who blame this Fisher firing on Carmelo Anthony. Guys, let's be real. Let's be real. None of this is Carmelo's fault. Carmelo has been as much of a leader as he possibly can be this season thus far, and I'm sorry if you disagree with me, but you're absolutely wrong. Has his shooting been off? Absolutely. Let's also remember he's injured. The Knicks are 0-9, 0-8 without him now, and had we had him, we might have won those games. But even though his shooting's been off, I mean, the man has been close to a triple-double several times this season. He's passing, he's getting the boards, he's doing what he has to do. And he's trusting his teammates, and I think that's a quality of leadership. If you read a lot of articles out there, I read one instance where, every time the national anthem is played, Carmelo Anthony takes Kristaps and puts him next to him. That's a sign of leadership. And I've said this before as well. I think people who are so gung-ho on trading Carmelo, I'm sorry, I think if you trade Carmelo, you're going to suffer, because KP is going to suffer. That's his mentor right now. So let's try and keep in mind that Carmelo is the centerpiece of this team. Porzingis is that eye on the future whose development right now is working with Melo, is learning from Melo. So let's just keep that in mind, and let's try and get the pieces to build around Melo. Now, there's been rumors out there that Kevin Durant could be coming here next season, and there's also rumors that the Knicks have a good deal of getting Russell Westbrook. Which one I prefer, I'm not really sure. I know the Knicks need a point guard, but there's the question of how well Westbrook and Carmelo are going to gel together. I'm a big Westbrook fan. I love his attitude. I love his presence on the court. I love his aggression, point blank, period. The man is a walking triple-double, as somebody on my Twitter commented earlier. The trio of Durant, however, Durant, Porzingis, and Carmelo is unmatched to me. So those are both interesting free agents to play around with the thought of, and obviously franchise changing. So Phil has some work to do, which is basically the essence of what I was saying. Back to the Melo bashing, it's unwarranted for sure. And people comparing Carmelo to LeBron as a leader, and LeBron being able to lead his team to the finals last season and Melo not being able to do it this season. Let's keep in mind that LeBron's squad last season is miles more talented than this Knicks team. Not saying that this Knicks team is not talented. I do believe we have talent, but let's be real. Let's be real. So whether or not the Knicks are going to make the playoffs depends on how they perform after this All-Star break. I think Carmelo needs to sit for the All-Star break, by the way. I think if the playoffs is something that they want and it's something that they still think is realistic, he needs to sit. He needs to rest that knee. Last season, he had an excuse. The All-Star game was in New York. We gave him a pass. Not this time. This time, the playoffs are still a realistic option, at least in my opinion, and he needs to step up and be there for his team and show truly what a leader he is. Talking about leadership, we're going to get back to that in a few. You guys all know what I'm talking about. We're going to take a short break. I'm going to come back and talk about the one and only Cam Newton. Thanks for listening, guys, and don't forget, every Tuesday, 1 to 2 p.m., She's Mic'd Up Radio. We'll be back.
My understanding was that turning around a team that's won 17 games and making a 40-win, 42-win, or whatever season out of it or more is a very remarkable task, and it's not been duplicated very often in this league. But saying that, we still thought our players could be playing better, and we think that there's a way for them to play better that we should see. And so it's always a statement, it's a lot easier to fire a coach than 15 players.
They just played better than us. I don't know what you want me to say. It's like they made more plays than us, and that's what it come down to. I mean, we had our opportunities. It wasn't nothing special that they did. We dropped balls, we turned the ball over, gave up sacks, threw errant passes. That's it. They scored more points than us.
Hey guys, so we're back here on this special broadcast of She's Mic'd Up Radio with me, your host, Sam Rodriguez. Please feel free to go follow me on Twitter. You can follow the show's Twitter at She's Mic'd Up Radio, or you can follow my personal Twitter where I'm a bit more detailed and most of my thoughts and opinions at @FroMagnum__. So on that break, what you just heard was some of the press conference from Phil and Rambis yesterday afternoon. And you also heard at the end there Cam Newton's press conference, post-game conference rather, after the Super Bowl. Before I get to that, I just want to address, as I did mention briefly earlier, how incredible that Broncos defense was. So I feel like the Broncos won the Super Bowl and it's like nobody cares because everybody's stuck on Cam. It's a shame, but it happens. You're going to go with the bigger story, the more controversial story. So I'm a big Cam Newton fan. I think he's a great character. I love the dabbing, the dancing, the giving the football to the kids. I think sports needs that kind of guy who has fun and you know, who's different, who doesn't fit the standards of what a typical athlete or quarterback for that matter is supposed to be. However, my initial response to Cam's post-game conference was that he could have handled it better. Yes, absolutely. Should he have walked out? Absolutely not. Though I am glad, like many others, that he didn't say anything that would further taint his image. And I sincerely hope that this one incident doesn't taint his image going forward, though it probably will stick with him for a while, if not forever. But I'm not going to crucify the man for acting on his emotions. Like I said earlier, I happen to like emotional athletes. I like aggressive athletes. I like athletes that don't like losing. And I think we spoke about this a little bit before with Russell Westbrook. Westbrook does not like losing, and he's had some interviews, and I'm pretty sure you guys all know which one I'm talking about, that may make people question his attitude and his leadership, though I think Durant is the leader of that team. However, going forward about Cam Newton, it's difficult to contain those kind of emotions on a stage that significant and a loss like that, where he was dominated at every level of the game and more than he had at any point in the season. It's hard to be a winner all season and then everything comes down crashing in the way that it did. I do have to say, though, I think what he said today was a bit alarming to me. He seems very defensive right now, and that's not the Cam that I know and that I love. There was an incident a while back with the referee, you guys might remember, where he said something to him in game, and then in his post-game conference, he went up to the ref, he apologized for what he said, and then he apologized to the media that he had to go up to him and apologize. You know, he spoke out of turn. That's the Cam that I like. I think Cam needs to understand as well, too, you know, the media is just doing their job. That's what they get paid to do. And Cam, you get paid to play football and sit there and answer those questions like the rest of your teammates did. It's okay. It's okay to be emotional. I think it's admirable. I think it's, you know, no, you don't want to lose. And obviously he didn't want to lose. Obviously he didn't want to be there following that loss. But another thing he said today that I found alarming too was, show me a good loser and I'll show you a loser. That may not have been directly, you know, him directly addressing his teammates, but in a way it was, because they all handled it very well. I happened to like the way Josh Norman handled it. He cried on national television. He let it all out, and that's okay, because he went into the post-game conference and he said, you know, it's a heartbreaking loss. However he worded it, he sat there, he answered the questions, he addressed his emotions. And people are different. Like I said, I'm not going to crucify Cam. I just hope that right now he's a certain way. He's still in his feelings, and rightfully so. I just hope going forward he learns from it, or he wins. You know, he's the one who said, if you want to stop me, if you want to shut me up, then stop me from getting in the end zone. And that's exactly what the Broncos did. And I don't think he's kind of like owned up to that just yet. He's not willing to accept it. And I think he'll learn. Like I said, he's 26, he's young. Those emotions are going to run high and they're going to get to you. But let's give it a rest. Let's not crucify the man. Unfortunately, his character is one of those where when you're on top, you're on top. And when you're on cloud nine and you're invincible, or at least you feel that way. Even after the one loss, it was like, whatever, it's one loss. It's like when we bug out about the Warriors losing a game, it's like, hey guys, they're still the greatest team in the NBA right now. So let's ease up. Let's put our foot on the brakes. But then when you lose, you have to humble yourself. And it's a difficult thing to do when you feel invincible. One thing or another thing that I wanted to comment on was certain comparisons that I was seeing on Twitter that I thought people were reaching a lot. Comparing Cam Newton to Coach Popovich, let's not go there. And they're comparing him in the sense like, why don't we hold Coach Pop to the standards of, Cam Newton or vice versa, however it was worded. That comparison is totally irrelevant. It's a moot point. It doesn't even make any kind of sense if you ask me. Coach Pop is a proven winner with how many rings under his belt, running a franchise beautifully, consistently. The Spurs play incredible basketball, and that's Coach Pop's thing. It's like his trademark thing. And the difference is here is that Coach Pop is the same in a win or in a loss. When he wins, he answers the media the same way. And it's not disrespectful. It's not with a sulking demeanor. It's funny. It's, witty. That's the word. It's witty. He's quick on his feet. And it's just like, he's right. How many times can you say, oh, they're putting the hoop in the basket and that's why we're winning? Cam did not do that. Cam's demeanor was off. Pop is consistent. Cam is high and low. So, like I said, let's not go there. Let's leave Coach Pop out of this. And let's let Coach Pop be Pop. And that sounds almost hypocritical. Let's let Cam be Cam. But there's a certain level of, professionalism that I think, athletes need to exercise. And I'm not saying all the time. People have their human moments, and that's exactly what he had. He is still human. But like I said, you learn from it. Pop does not fall into any of those categories that you guys are trying to place him and Cam Newton in together. It's actually absurd. But Cam and the Panthers will be back, and he did say that. And I'd like to see Cam get a ring. I hope he doesn't change. I hope he doesn't get more defiant. I hope Cam remains that happy quarterback, giving footballs to the kids. He didn't let anybody down. Let's not go there either. He's just got to learn. He's got to learn. He's got to accept the loss and not use it as a way to be defiant against the media, but use that loss as motivation to get back to the Super Bowl and to get that ring and to make whichever community proud. All of those that love him, make them proud. And that's really all I have to say on that matter. As for the Super Bowl itself, it was pretty boring. I was disappointed, but that's a defensive game for you. So on that note, please tune in every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. She's Mic'd Up Radio will be back February 16th, and I'll be back with my co-host, Javier Gutierrez, and quite possibly our intern from last semester, Jason Fernandez. I'll be putting this on YouTube so you guys can listen whenever you want. And I'll be doing Periscopes as well, so please tune into those and comments. Your comments are always really fun to read and to answer questions that you guys have. As I said, follow me on Twitter at @FroMagnum__, and I'll be back with you. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful week, and let's go Knicks.